Hey there, I know you're on a journey from grief to growth, just like I am, and you may be looking for tools to help you live a more soul aligned life. Well, head over to my Grief to Growth store. It's your one stop shop for inspiration, for healing, and for transformation. Inside there, you're going to find some free resources to help you get started. You'll find guided meditations to calm your mind and reconnect with your spirit. You'll find signed copies of my book, Gems of Healing. You'll find my brand new Oracle deck to help you tap into daily divine guidance. And there's some powerful mini courses designed to fit in your busy life and move you forward one gentle step at a time. So whether you're deep in grief, seeking spiritual growth, or just ready for a reset, there's something waiting for you right now. Just go to grieftogrowth.com/store, grief2growth.com/store, and start exploring. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, I'm Brian Smith, and welcome to Grief to Growth. And whether you're tuning in for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I want to thank you for being here. This podcast is a space where we explore life's biggest questions: who we are, why we're here, where we came from, where we're going, all this stuff. We don't shy away from the hard stuff. Instead, we lean into it together. And we seek healing, we seek meaning, and we seek growth through grief and even beyond. Today's episode is going to be a deeply enriching one. I'm joined by Sifu Boggie, also known as Paul Brighton. Sifu is a Taoist guide, a healer, and a mentor with over 40 years experience helping people reconnect with their inner wisdom and their vitality. Trained under Taoist masters, Sifu blends ancient teachings like Qigong, Tai Chi, and Shun Dao philosophy with practical energy work and body-centered healing techniques like reflexology, Tuina, I believe it is, and Taoist shamanic principles. You'll hear how this modern-day barefoot doctor empowers people not by fixing them, but by showing them how to unlock their healer within. We'll explore questions like, what exactly is Taoism? How can age-old practices like Qigong help us not just survive, but to thrive in today's chaotic world? And how does understanding the flow of energy in our bodies support physical and emotional healing, even at the level of our DNA? Sifu will also share how his own eclectic life journey from police work to pastry chef to spiritual guide shaped his outlook and gave him the tools to help others navigate change, embrace life's messiness, and find magic in the moment. So this conversation isn't just about philosophy. It's about practical tools for dealing with grief, with stress, with trauma, and the unpredictability of life with grace and with empowerment. If you've ever felt disconnected from your body, if you've ever felt stuck in emotional pain, or if you're just curious about how ancient wisdom can apply to modern life, this episode's for you. And after you listen, I invite you to continue the conversation over at grieftogrowth.com/community to connect with myself and with like-minded listeners. So with that, I want to welcome to Grief to Growth, Sifu Boggie.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today. Before we get started, one thing really basic. I think a lot of people, at least in the U.S., are not really that familiar with Taoism. So maybe explain to us what that is.
Right. Well, so Chinese words normally have more than one meaning. They tend to have several meanings, and Taoism means the way, the path, the balance, and it's within religious circles, it has become a religion, but it was more of a philosophy, more of a way of being. When you go back to the original knowledge, Taoism is about connecting to oneness, connecting both the inner world and the outer world. And in actual fact, a little side note, if you've ever been a fan of Star Wars, Taoism is actually what Star Wars was based on. So the whole thing of the Force is what what Taoists call Qi, and the light and the dark side of the Force is actually yin and yang. And even things like Yoda said, like, do not try, do or do not. There is no try.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually Taoist quotes and Buddhist quotes. So it is actually like you'll know Taoism more than you realize if you're into Star Wars or if you're into certain things. And it's very much the Taoist path is about balance. Everything's balanced, but not like flat scales, like trying to make scales still, more like a wave, that there's an equal up to an equal down, there's an equal expansion to a contraction, and things, flow the way they need to. So it's understanding that there is a flow to things. And like within Taoism, like one of the things you learn is to actually look back at the past and see everything's happened and look at the negative stuff and go, well, actually that led to this and this led to that, and realize that everything's actually a point of learning and growing from. And also, I mean, with Taoism, it's very much connected to the idea of a study called epigenetics, which is a scientific term which basically means that the way we think and feel affects our physical health. And there's a big connection between Taoism and epigenetics, and even Taoism and quantum physics. There's a lot of terminology and a lot of things within Taoism that they believe everything is all interconnected. That life is a dream or an illusion, a little bit like now science thinks that life could be a simulation or matrix. And there's about the interconnectedness of everything. Everything is your guide and your muse. So, yeah, Taoism has lots of different ways, lots of different types of balance. And things that I do, like the Qigong, the Tai Chi, the Reiki, the Chinese Reiki, Shin Chi Shen, they're all versions of or parts of the Taoist path.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how some of these ancient philosophies / religions are starting to come back, or the West is starting to discover them. And as you said, the connections to epigenetics, which I believe is a fairly modern term, and to even quantum physics. It seems like the ancients discovered these things many centuries ago.
Yeah, 100%. And there's quite a bit of that. Is like the whole idea of the flower life, which is like these 64 circles interconnected. It normally has a circle around it. Well, that represents what they call a tora field or trivial field, which is a bit like a donut. And quite recently, in the last 20 years, they discovered that the heart actually creates an electric field, this bioelectric magnetic field. And when you're happy and positive, that expands and all the cells within your body speed up and actually heal. But when you're angry and frustrated and scared, that contracts. And then as that field contracts, everything outside that field actually starts to break down. And that field is actually a tangible thing. It's been, it can be detected now through certain equipment. But we feel it, when somebody says, "Oh, that person," and when they walk in the room lights up. Is you're feeling that field, that energy, and this is the thing, is that a lot of what not just Taoism, but a lot of the ancient knowledges, what they talked about, science is now actually going, well, actually, there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and so it's interesting. The essence of is like the things that we were thought were woo-woo were actually now through science being proved. And and also, I mean, I worked in the Fortune 500 businesses back in the 90s, like the 100 and 500, so millionaire and billionaire companies, and they will use what works. They don't care if it's if it's a massage or pendulum swinging. If it works, they'll use it. And that's the interesting thing, is that in our society we sort of poo-poo certain things, or even about the way we think and feel. Oh, you should ignore that and don't focus on that. But in other places, those things are very much taken seriously and very much understood. And it's like we're in the Eastern philosophy, is that this idea of epigenetics, the way you think and feel, affects your physical health, was very much respected and understood. Very much, is that you need times to do certain things. You need time to, be happy. You need time to be sad. You need time to appreciate stuff, gratitude, but you also need time for grief when needed. These are real things. And instead of trying to push them away or hide from them, we need to actually spend a little bit of time embracing them, but not dwelling in them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Then that's the difference, is feeling all the feelings, but not dwelling in them. But as you were talking and you mentioned epigenetics and the way we feel affects the way that, or the way that we think affects the way that we feel our bodies behave. I was thinking, there's this thing in science that we know about called the placebo effect. And whenever they're testing a drug, they have to test against a placebo because the placebo effect is so strong. So we know scientifically, and we even include it in our Western medicine, that there is a certain amount of, like, if I believe this, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I do like bringing that up because it goes up. Well, there's a bit more to that, and a lot deeper than that. Is that so by law we have, it's not just in the test, but by law we have placebos. And the whole idea of the placebo is that it gives them it's supposed to give them a judgment of, well, if that person has nothing, to this person has had something, and rather not give them anything, we'll let them they'll give them the idea that they're having something.
Right.
So it's not just placebo medicines, there's actually placebo operations and even placebo chemotherapy machines. In every country has to have one placebo chemotherapy machine where it makes the noise but nothing actually happens.
I didn't know that.
The interesting thing in all of that, like, because a lot of people get shocked on that, it's like, yes, but now look at the information from the placebos. And this is where it gets really interesting, is that 80% of people who have the placebo get moderately to completely better. So whether it's an aspirin for a headache or an operation or even like chemotherapy, the placebos, 80% of people actually get better. Now, there's another version of that called the nocebo. And the nocebo is, you have the guaranteed medicine or operation that 99.999% of the time it does what it needs to, but those people still get ill. That it flips, that they have an operation that they should have survived and somehow they die. It's the way it is. But that's called nocebo, is where when they actually look back and the people were so negative or focusing on a certain thing that their disbelief in it has an 80% chance of actually coming true. So what I always want to get people to understand is whether you do believe or whether you don't believe, you're 80% of the time you're going to be right.
Wow.
So what do you believe?
Yeah.
What are you focusing on?
Yeah.
And again, then the way we feel, so happiness literally increases our immunity system and the blood flows, as well as the energetic system, that bioelectric magnetic field in the heart. It all increases. But when we're sad and there are times we are sad, and for good reason, but that decreases. And we even know this in sort of like old wives' tales. Is like, oh, if you work too hard, if you're too tired, too stressed, you're more likely to get a cold, or you're more likely to trip over. So we even know this, but we sort of poo-poo it. We ignore that information. But it's very much that it doesn't matter, and this is not to upset anybody, but it doesn't matter what you believe out there, God-wise. You are the creator inside your own body. You create your own reality in here. Somebody else may be doing it out there, but right in your body, it's down to you. And the way you think and feel truly affects your own personal health. And I've seen that more several times through my life, where I've had people who are super, super positive, and they were told it's terminal, and they've got and they made through. My dad had throat cancer. Had throat cancer, and throat cancer is notoriously known to have a people don't go past 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is. And my dad actually lasted for 15 years cancer free, and then in 2020 it came back. And it came back in a vengeance with everything else was happening, and because he used to be really, really super positive, but with COVID and everything, he suddenly went very negative, and he saw things in a very dark light. And very, very quickly, within diagnosed in 2020 in the November, in the April, he passed away the following year. From which is like when you look at for 15 years, he was perfectly fine with something that normally nobody goes past 5 years.
Right.
And then, but changed, the attitude changed, lifestyle changed. We couldn't see him, you know, for long periods of time. He was on his own for long periods of time. The world changed, and that affects the way you think and feel, and it, you know, has an effect on our physicality, our physical self, as well as everything else.
So we talked a little bit about Taoism and what that is, and I appreciate the explanation. How is it similar to or different from Buddhism?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, you know me, I'm Brian, but you may not know I've been part of IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, for over 8 years. I've attended, I presented, and I've witnessed firsthand how life-changing this community can be. Now, whether or not you've had a near-death experience, IANDS is for anyone who's ever asked the big questions. What happens when we die? Why are we here? What does it mean to live fully now? This year marks 50 years since the birth of near-death studies. To honor that, IANDS has launched the Chrysalis campaign, an effort to grow the organization so that it can continue bringing these powerful messages to the world. If you join IANDS at the supporting level or higher, or donate $100 or more, you'll receive a beautiful limited edition commemorative mug as a thank you. But more importantly, you'll be part of something truly meaningful. Visit IANDS.org, IANDS.org, and click Give to support this vital work. Because the more we understand death, the more deeply we live.
Right. So, big smile on my face. Okay, so the Buddhism and Daoism are very, very similar. So when we hear the word religion comes from the Latin word religio, which means bond with the creator. Now, Buddhism and Daoism actually are technically not religions because they believe in omnipresence. And omnipresence as in everything's oneness, everything's the creator, everything's collective consciousness. So they're not technically religions. Buddhism, Taoism, because they don't have, though a lot of people say, but there's Buddha. But Buddha is a state of being rather than a person sitting in a cloud. And the difference, so with Buddhism, there is this characteristic more of Buddha nature, and there is a belief that life, that through life there is suffering. And when you learn to understand that suffering, you can learn to then thrive and excel and go beyond that, and eventually go into their version of higher enlightenment or nirvana. With Taoism is that everything is energy, everything is conscious energy, and this reality is just one of many that happens again and again. But it's almost, or at least in the version of Taoism I follow, it's very much that this is like a living matrix. If you want to call it a matrix, it's like a living matrix in the essence of we created this reality. We create our dreams and we created this reality. That if this is just another version of a dream, we created this ourselves, the collective we, the big we, and we're just interconnected with this and flow. And the point is that within Taoism, a lot you'll see I'm showing a symbol for those listening to the audio, a white and black symbol with two little dots in, one white dot, one black dot in the opposite way. And a lot of people call this yin yang, but its actual name is Tai Chi, because yin yang are the energies within, and we sort of mentioned it earlier about Star Wars and the light and the dark side of the Force. Well, yin yang flow, and when they flow, they rotate. And they rotate. They can rotate one way, or they can turn in on themselves and rotate the other way. And they are a representation of night and day, or breathing in and breathing out, or expanding and contracting, or two people interacting. They're a relationship, and this relationship, this supreme ultimate, is Tai Chi. So yin yang are sort of the qualities, but this symbol itself is actually known as Tai Chi. And Tai Chi is about the interactive, about finding that balance, finding that flow. And the Tao is all about this finding your path through this reality, finding every Tao. So there's a Tao for there's a Tao for the way you walk, there's a Tao for the way you eat, there's a Tao for the way you interact, and it's finding every one of those. So every balance, every path, everything has a way of doing it to make it more harmonious. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So in terms of your background, I'm curious, you don't look like you're Chinese, and I don't think you're how did you get into understanding the path of Tao?
Right, so no, I'm British born, half English, half Irish actually, half Irish, half Chinese. No, I'm not Chinese. That was you. Half Russian, half English, half Irish, half Russian. Born in England, but I studied. So what happened was, I not until much later I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and so always been a little bit different, and I got bullied at school. And from being bullied, I ended up learning martial arts. And from the martial arts, I started off in one martial arts, and was going up their belt system. So they have gradings of belts, and they had an adjudicator came in, and the adjudicator sort of assessed me, and this adjudicator was a little bit like a traveling sort of nomad, where he would go to look for certain students or find things, and he came across in this school, in this martial arts school of Katida. He found me, and he said, he said to my parents, "Your son has very interesting qualities. I would love to teach him. Will you allow me to teach him?" And he ended up teaching me, and then he introduced me to his brother, who's he was very much the statistician and the martial side, and then his brother did more of the healing side, but within the Tao, Chinese arts, martial arts, healing arts, and spiritual arts are all interconnected. It's called the three M's. So it's like we sort of see martial arts as fighting, but even when you listen to the word and doing things in a certain format, and the art is flowing. So it's actually about doing things in a certain way to find the art, to find your personal development. So that's what true martial arts is actually about. It's not about fighting. It's actually about learning more about oneself. So I started off doing this about 12 years old. And by 17, I started to teach a little bit myself. But Shin and Po, my two teachers, they also were part of an organisation they were part of. When I forget words, it's a wonderful thing. They're diplomatic. They're part of the diplomatic circles, so they looked after diplomats. They also did the FT 500, 100 index businesses. So they trained up people to either do close protection, to actually do massage, or other things. They were even within the FT 100, 500 index businesses. They actually use psychics. They use remote viewers. They use telepaths and empaths. And my teachers would teach the people, the psychics, they would teach them Qigong to enhance their psychic ability, because that's one of the key principles of Tai Chi and Qigong, is that it affects your physical health, it affects your emotional health, and it affects your psychic health or your psychic abilities. So it's hence, like why, in essence, George Lucas based Star Wars on Taoism, because it has all of those paths. There's a mystical side to it. There's a fighting side to it, and and that understanding. I started off, but by 17, I started going into the close protection side, and I was still diet teaching and doing that as well. And at the same time, I also had a career. So I didn't just I only did that, say, 3 to 4 months every year. And the rest of the time, I actually was becoming a baker. I actually trained to be a baker. Then from baker, I eventually became a pastry chef. And so, my path was going 2 ways, but slightly differently. So I did the Eastern stuff with my Sifus, my teachers, but at the same time, I was also doing something, a life here. But for me, they were very much interconnected. As my Sifu would say, Poe would, like, when I learned to bake, he said, bakers, awesome. Bakers make great greater massage, because kneading bread is like doing a back. And that's the thing in Taoism, that everything's connected to everything else. You might not necessarily see it at first, but everything has a connection.
Wow. So interesting path to get where you are. I love hearing people's stories, because I think life is just really interesting. We think it's going to go one way, and it's totally unpredictable. So you mentioned Sifu. So Sifu, I assume, means teacher. Is that correct?
Yeah. So look, Sifu Boggie. So Sifu. So in Google, like, not all words translate easily, and in Google you put in the word Sifu, and it will say master or master of martial arts. But Sifu has 2 sides. You got the Si and the Fu, or Shi and Fu. And Shi sort of means family. It sort of means parenting, guidance, pointing, guiding in a certain way. And Fu is family, and Shi is sort of like the guidance. So it's sort of like a guiding parent, or a guidance. Sometimes Fu can be father, but Shifus or Sifus can be male or female, but it's more like a parent energy. So that guiding energy, and in an essence, it's a loving energy, a loving guiding energy. Bruce Lee once said, which was a Taoist saying, he said, it's like a finger pointing towards the moon. Do not look at the finger, because you'll miss all that heavenly glory. So I'm the finger that helped point, and so I help guide, but I'm not the be all and end all. Is that's why I sort of say, no, I'm not a master, I'm a Sifu, or I'm a guide, I'm a muse. I'm not a master, because that energy has a sort of dictation to it of, you must do what I say, and I know everything, and what I say is right. And it's like, that's not what's right for me is right for me, but doesn't mean it's right for you. But on the journey, you find what's right and what's wrong for you. So yes, Sifu means guide, muse.
Yeah, thank you. So what is Qigong?
Okay, so every word means more than one thing. So
Sure.
Qigong means breath work or energy exercise.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing for most people in the West, you've heard of Qigong, you just don't know you've heard of Qigong.
Right.
If you've heard of Tai Chi, you know Qigong, because Tai Chi is actually a style of Qigong. So Qigong means energy exercise or breath work, any exercise that builds energy in the body, the mind, and the spirit. So like going running, well, that's just an exercise, but you learn to run with relaxing the body and breathing, using particular breathing techniques and landing the feet in a certain way, you've turned your running into a Qigong running. So it becomes a energy exercise. It works in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you get people say, oh, which is better, Tai Chi or Qigong? But that's a little bit like saying, which is better, music or R&B? Well, R&B is music, or blues. It's like, which is better, music or blues?
Right.
And it's like, but that one is the other. And that's the thing, is that it's just a misunderstanding. Tai Chi would be, if Qigong was music, Tai Chi would be a bit like classical music, because it's lots of exercises all put together to make a flowing form. Where like Qigong itself, like there are lots of different Qigongs for different energy, for different situations, for different ailments and injuries. There are lots of different ways to help you. So there are different Qigongs for bad back, for headaches, for anxiety, stress. There's a Qigong. I always say there's a Qigong pretty much for everything.
Interesting. So that kind of leads to my next question. I was going to ask you, how did these practices help with people that are going through emotional distress or going through grief?
So Qigongs are energy exercises. They're also a form of meditation, and meditation is sort of like a one people get sort of confused on. Meditation simply means focus on one thing and forget everything else. And so fishing can be a meditation, knitting can be a meditation, doing a crossword puzzle could be a meditation. It's all about rewiring your focus onto a certain thing and allow your unconscious mind to then release tension, stress, and everything else. So how it works and over the last 40 years, I've helped many people with PTSD, anxiety, bereavement, stress, and it's about giving you exercises that will start to help you focus on something else. Because the biggest thing in Taoism is that what you focus on grows. So the more you focus on something, the more it will grow inside you. So the biggest issue is like when we're suffering with something like bereavement or whatnot, we spend a lot of time focusing on that. That will build those memories of that situation, or the sadness that grows and builds within. And you need to sort of just redirect that. It's not saying about forgetting that person, is just about redirecting, taking your energy out of that grief and putting it back into love and fond memories, and into focusing it on a more expansive outcome. So what Qigong does is that it will give you things to focus on. It will give you ways of relaxing the body. And in essence, what Qigong does, it makes you feel better. And because it makes you feel better, it then affects your physical health, the whole idea of epigenetics. Hence why in epigenetics, two of the big founders of it, Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza, they're both Tai Chi Qigong practitioners. They both practice because they actually know, and they encourage, they version their style of Qigong or whatnot. They focus on because of the way it affects the body. And very similar is yoga, Pilates, meditation. But especially a whole body exercise, something that's not just focusing on one thing, but focusing on everything. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing with emotions, so dis-ease is imbalance, or an imbalance in the body. So an illness is imbalance in the body here, and we focus on the physical diseases, but we can get emotional disease. We get emotional imbalance, and when we're too much in a certain, like in grief or in suffering, the body starts to go into survival mode and it starts to shut down. So we need to get everything flowing again. And the Tao, the balance is all about movement. And so what Qigong does is moving the body, and gets the body moving, and it gets the body to start relaxing the muscles and stretching the tendons, because tendons tend to actually store toxins within our body. That's why if you ever stretch, or people do yoga, they say, oh, I feel better. And it's because you're releasing stagnation within your body. Or the medical term would be toxins. That toxins from emotions and also lack of movement, the body starts to actually store toxins within the body, and that's stored within the tendons and then the muscles. And so the movement of Tai Chi and Qigong, or movement, balanced movement, where you breathe and expand, that starts to release those toxins. And the other thing about especially Qigong is we talk about harmonizing. So we balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain through movement. So when you breathe, like expanding one way, and when you breathe out, contracting another. And you're doing it with an alignment of the spine and the body while relaxing the muscles and stretching the tendons. And this creates a whole body homeostasis, a whole body balance. So it balances the left and right hemispheres of the mind, which therefore then the pituitary start working, and pineal start all working together, and the body can start to reset itself and bring itself back to a harmony.
Okay. So that also leads to the next question I was going to ask you, but you say you don't fix people, you guide them. So what does that mean?
Well, again, for me, it goes back to the Sifu thing. Is that is that we all, one thing I learned a long time ago, and it always, even now, it still amazes me, is that when you actually study the human body, our human body is actually meant to be self-healing. And you actually go back, the stories in the past where humans were living 250, 500 years, and it's like, well, if that's the case, why aren't we doing that now? And there's actually information on is that our society's high levels of stress is actually deteriorating our bodies a lot quicker than it should be. And so so I know that we are self-healing systems, that we can actually self-heal and regenerate ourselves, but it's about knowing how to do that. And I mean, so I do back massage, I do many types of healing, so I can help you, and that's cool. But in Christianity, and that's the saying I'm about to say, that actually goes even beyond that. But there's an old saying that says, give a person a fish and you feed them for a day. Teach them how to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. And I want to teach you how to fish. I want to teach you. My goal is to help people help themselves, because you should actually be able to do that. We are meant to be far more independent than we become. Doesn't mean that you don't need help from others. We don't need a doctor. But in the Eastern philosophy, like the barefoot doctor, they would go around and they would help people and teach them Qigong and teach them Chinese medicine and do massage, but also teach them massage as well. So by making them independent, they would last longer and be stronger. But then when you do need somebody, you would go to them. It's a bit like in the old days, for a lot of people, they knew how to maintain their car, but when something really went wrong, then they would go and see a mechanic. And it's that sort of thing, is that we're supposed to be a lot more independent than we become. We sort of think we have to rely a lot on other people, when at least to a certain degree, we should be able to, find things out for ourselves and help ourselves. But that doesn't mean you can't ask for help. Yeah. And you should, always ask for help, but you can always help yourself. Asking for help is a way of helping yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's that balance, right? The balance between being somewhat independent, but also the interdependence, that we're all one, and we're all meant to rely and have that energy, exchange even.
100%. Yeah. And that's, I just think, especially you hear it with some people, like they talk about, when my grandparents would say, community is a lot stronger now, and a lot of people are more independent. And I think, well, they just like cut themselves off. But it's this idea of it's going out there and, finding those connections, finding the people that you want to be with, but that's the strength, and that, that requires you to go out there and be, look and know that you can do things for yourself, but we need each other as well. It's finding that balance, that harmony.
Yeah. So what type of energy imbalances, or what kind of common energy imbalances are you finding in people nowadays?
So there's a lot. There's, there's a number of different ones. So, like for the UK at least, there's a lot of people with fibromyalgia, which is chronic pain, MEMS, getting a lot of back problems, a lot of shoulder and neck problems. Well, in Eastern philosophy, the shoulders and neck, the neck is the connection between what you believe and what you can physically achieve. So when you think you've got too much on, you could get tension within your neck. And tension within the shoulders is like the world is on your shoulders, Atlas is on your shoulders. So what people don't understand, or at least in Eastern philosophy, that the parts of your body actually represent our metaphysical. So they'll represent. So back problems is the world is on your shoulders, or you've got too much on you. Different organs mean different things. So at least in the Eastern philosophy, there is metaphors for this. But you get a lot of chronic pain issues. We're getting a lot of people with general back problems or neck and shoulder problems, and lots of stiffness. Lots of people that are starting to stiffen up, and it goes back a little bit on the metaphor in the old days of cars. If you had a car, you maintained your car. If you didn't put enough oil and water in your car would seize up. Well, it's a little bit happening to people now. They seem to not being putting enough oil and water in their vehicles, in themselves. But that oil and water could actually be movement. It could actually be allowing yourself to move and expand. Because when we close off physically or emotionally, we close off physically. So being, like closed, you don't want to listen to the world, or, hunching up, tensing up. When we tense the muscles, we stop the blood circulation. It starts to affect the whole body. So again, with the epigenetics, the way you think and feel literally affects your health. So if you're shutting down emotionally or becoming closed off and angry or repressing emotions, you start to repress toxins into your body. You start actually stiffening up into your body.
That's really interesting. As you're saying that, I was thinking, I've been going to a place here locally called the Stretch Lab lately, because I have neck and shoulder stuff, right? And they're like, so they say it's from sitting too much, and I do sit a lot. But I think we tend to look at it from just the physical point of view, as opposed to looking at the metaphysical point of view also, which could contribute to that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there. You know I'm a grief guide and author, but you may not know I'm a proud member of IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I've been a part of IANDS for over 8 years, and I've even had the honor of presenting at some of their events. Now, whether you've had an NDE or simply curious about life after death, IANDS can open your heart and your mind. Join us August 27th through 31st, just outside of Chicago, at the Hilton Oak Brook Hills for the IANDS annual conference. It's a powerful 4-day gathering of nearly 1,000 people exploring consciousness, healing, and the continuation of life. You're going to hear from world-renowned speakers like Raymond Moody, Bruce Grayson, Diane Hennessy Powell, Mark Anthony, and Carolyn Mace. And don't miss our healing center with Reiki, massage, mediumship, and spiritual counseling. Visit conference.iands.org to register. Come, be informed, be inspired, and be among those who know we are more than our bodies and love never dies.
Yeah, and within modern, let's say, modern science or modern medicine, we had for a long time seen things separately, and this is not connected to this.
Right.
But it's a lot more connected. And like, say, you got quantum physics, quantum physics, like saying, well, actually, the quantum field which is the 99.999% of an atom, is not actually empty space, but it's an energy that connects everything to everything else. So quantum physics is saying all is one. And epigenetics is saying the way you fit, that your physical body is your environment, which is your physical body, is actually affected by your emotional state.
Right.
So your emotions affect your health. Your emotional health and your physical health is the same thing. It's part of the same thing. So all this old stuff is now coming back because it's all actually interconnected, and we've just separated it, and it's now time to actually merge it back, maybe in a different way, but definitely merge all this information back.
Yeah, well, I think in the West we've not only just separated, I think we've kind of dismissed all the metaphysical, even a lot of the emotional stuff. We're just always looking for physical causes for things, and as you pointed out with we talked about the placebo effect. We talked about the situation with your father and stuff. We know that our thoughts can affect our bodies, but we've kind of gotten away from that and just said, oh, it doesn't matter what you think, just take this pill.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I mean the point of, if anything, so the point of the placebo or the knowledge of the placebo is 80% of the time, if you really think and feel it, you'll make it work. So use that power, but that is like at first I think a lot of people sound very shocked when they hear that. It's like, no, but you're missing the point. You're missing the point. If a placebo can actually if a placebo can actually fix your headache, or you have an operation and nothing happened, but you're fixed, that's the powerful thing. Yeah. You're the powerful thing. You are so much more powerful than you've been led to believe, that you've led yourself to believe, and that's the thing. It's taking the power back. It's and that's, I think there's a big thing in medical science that a frown takes less energy than a smile to do. That it's easier to frown than it is to smile, which leads to an uncomfortable philosophy of it for a lot of people, it takes less energy to be in a negative state than it does a positive state, because a positive state, you've got to keep working on that, keep doing that. And it's this thing of, is that, well, we take control, and there's a great power there, but we've got to work on it. And you can't just do it for one. We've been taking these pills thinking, oh yeah, it will solve it for me, which in China, that's known as the golden pill. The golden, you do this one thing, you do one Tai Chi class, you take this pill, and everything's going to be solved. And it's like, no, life is not like that. But the continuation, the flow, there's another Taoist saying of, if you are rowing upstream, if you stop rowing, you'll stop. You won't stop, but you'll go backwards. So the whole idea is that we keep on working on ourselves. We keep on doing stuff, because if we don't, our body will use that energy up and will deteriorate. So it's about we can achieve so much, and we have the potential to do so much, but it's just about doing effort. But effort can be effortless if you have the right attitude, if you focus in the right way, if you make it fun. My big thing, how I teach, I try to make it as fun as possible for me, let alone anybody else, because then you're not, when things are fun, time flies by. You don't realize you've been doing it for 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and that's the point. That's the point. When you make things, and what I call childlike, so a lot of people in certain communities or spiritual communities talk about the divine feminine, the divine masculine. There's also the divine child, the divine within us. We actually have the divine feminine and divine masculine and the divine child. Not just, not whether you're woman, man, banana, or goat. Their qualities, their energies. So the masculine is about your action, it's about your doing, asserting yourself. The feminine is your feeling, your understanding, your nurturing. And the child is the playful side, but it's also the opening up to the consciousness, opening up to the possibilities of what if, because that's what, in essence, that's what children do. So you've got to have that feminine side to nurture, to keep things going. You've got to have that physical, that masculine side, do something physical and get it done. But you also got to have that play. You've got to have the sacred child and allow yourself to play and nurture and expand into that daydream and expand into consciousness. And what if I do this? What if, and allow yourself to see the possibilities, because what you focus on grows.
Yeah, I love what you said about, and it kind of reminds me of what you said earlier about like meditation, because I know so many people when I bring up the word meditation, they just get turned off. They're like, I just can't sit and not do anything. But you talked about fishing, you talked about knitting, you talked about doing crossword puzzles, anything that you lose yourself in, any activity that can allow you to really focus and get into that flow. It doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged on the floor.
No, and that's again, it's something that we've sort of, oh, it means this, and it's like, but it doesn't. I often say to I got friends who love fishing and like carp fishing, and you're going fishing. Oh, you go meditating, have fun.
Yeah,
and it's like, Boggie, I'm not meditating. You are. Do you forget everything? Yes. Do you enjoy it? Yes. It's meditating. Go shoot.
Yeah.
But it's that thing of we and it's sort of one thing I liked about the Chinese state of mind is that one word nearly every word in Chinese means more than one meaning. There's very few that only have one meaning. Very, very few. Like in English, like two, one, two, or go to, or too many. It's got more than one meaning. Chinese a lot, but that whole idea of you hear the word meditating and people sit there cross-legged going on. No, it can mean so many things. Because it's not you're thinking of one outcome rather than what the actual meaning is itself. You're thinking of the effect, not the cause. The cause, the meditating, is focusing in some way, focusing on one thing, forgetting everything else. That's what meditating is about. So therefore, meditating can be so many different things.
Yeah, and I also liked what you said, because we don't talk a lot about the divine child. We do sometimes. We talk here about the inner child, a little bit. And that's starting to become a thing. But that if it's not fun, if it's not enjoyable, if it's drudgery, we're not going to do it. But it is a practice. I mean, for me, I've realized there's certain things that I do every day, and it's become a practice, because it doesn't have to be drudgery, but you have to be dedicated to it.
Or if fun is a word that makes you uneasy, interesting. It has to be interesting to keep the forebrain. Our forebrain in Chinese is known as the monkey mind. Our forebrains are known to have 60 to 90,000 thoughts every single day. And so we get easily distracted because that's a lot of thoughts flying around in our head. Meditation is about pulling yourself out of monkey mind and pulling yourself back into the rear of the brain rather than being in the forebrain. So it's the understanding that you need if it's too samey for a lot of people, it becomes boring very quickly. So you need to flip it up. And also it's that child mind as well. You want to make it pretty, and you want to keep it interesting. But there's another thing about the divine child, is that it's actually medically known now, is that children naturally fidget. Like children can't sit still, they fidget, and parents, sit still, stop moving, sit still. And that goes into your adulthood. We actually now know that a lot of our illnesses are caused by the lack of movement within our body. And fidgeting is actually helping the body release toxins and stop muscles from going to sleep. So when children fidget and move, it's because certain muscles are starting to seize up or becoming a bit too stagnant, and the body gets them to twitch, to move, and to fidget to release those toxins. And it also helps process their organs. The organs move better when your body's moving. So, like for those in audio land, I sit on a yoga ball, on a balance ball. I'm always like, I used to have my own podcast, and people say, you're always moving about. It's like, yes, because that's about flow. It's about, and in actual fact, rather than sitting on a chair, which keeps you very stationary, but your muscles start to stagnate, and then you get lower back pain or leg pain because you're always still on a yoga ball, one of those big cushions. You're sitting there and you're moving. You allow yourself to actually move and twitch. Your body's circulating energy. It keeps flowing, so you stay a lot healthier for longer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And yes, for people who are listening, Sifu is sitting on a ball, and that movement is very apparent. It's cool. So we talked earlier about Taoism and Buddhism aren't necessarily religions in the way that we think of religions. I guess I think of them more as philosophies. But what do they teach us about death and the afterlife?
So within both Taoism and Buddhism, it's very much the belief of reincarnation, that things live and die over and over again. The one main difference between Buddhism and Taoism is that in Buddhism there's more of like a ladder or tier that we to get to Nirvana, to get to heaven of sorts, you go up these different tiers. Now, human life is about actually somewhere in the middle, and above us are trees and different other animals and other plants, and you evolve. And both Buddhism and Taoism say that trees themselves are beings in a constant state of consciousness and of meditation. And so the difference is like that they see it more like, let's say, a tier structure. And if you didn't have a great life, next life you might be in a lesser creature. I mean, Taoism is that all creatures are sacred. Everything is sacred, even, pardon my rudeness, even poo. Everything is sacred. So therefore you could actually, within the idea of reincarnation, they'll actually flow in between. Now, the interesting thing with that, it was actually Nikola Tesla who said a saying which later was said by Einstein. He just changed it slightly. Through his studies, Nikola Tesla said that all energy appears to be conscious, and as energy is conscious, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed. Mm-hmm. So he was hinting at the idea that there's reincarnation, that energy is conscious, we are conscious, so therefore once we leave here we must go somewhere else. And then you have, I mentioned it earlier, so in 1974, physicists discovered the quantum field. And the quantum field is that the atom is not 99.999% empty space, but that empty space is actually a field that connects every atom with every other atom. And when they started doing split experiments with atoms, and they had one part here, one part 14 miles away, and they agitated or tickled one part of the atom, the other responded. It was basically saying that everything is connected to everything else. Mm-hmm. So, whatever you believe is that there is something. Where I'm not saying it's heaven, I'm not saying it's the banana. I don't know what it is, but I know that there is something beyond this one, and we will keep going because we are energy. We are conscious energy. Now, one of the things also within Taoism is that So the word soul is Latin, and it means a body of breath. The body, us. We are a body of breath. So it would state that without a body, our soul, our consciousness, our soul cannot survive, that it needs a body. Within Taoism, there's more that everything is the Tao, and within the sort of words of the Tao De Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, and the Tao is shapeless and formless. And what he's sort of saying is that one of the Taos is us, consciousness, and consciousness is not just this body. We're not just Sifu Boggie. We're not just Bob. We're not Frank. We're not a fish. We're not a dog. We're everything. We can be everything, and we flow through lots of different states. And within Taoism, there are many Taoist poets that said, I've dreamed, I had a dream where I was a butterfly in a field of corn. And when I woke up, I couldn't tell the difference between which was the dream. Is the dream of, am I this philosopher writing this down, or was I that butterfly in that corn? Which one's dreaming and which one's real? And I think that happens a lot, is that you think of your past and you think, well, it's almost like a distant memory. It's almost, was that? It could almost be a dream,
right.
And you think of the future, and you dream of the future. The only real thing is right now.
Yeah.
Right here, right now is the only real thing, and that's the thing that we need to focus on more when we get distracted by the past, the present, the future, the past, and there's lots of distractions, but the reality is right now is the present moment, and we focus on that present moment, and we can expand and grow. But also within Taoism, this concept of, because you're consciousness and you're actually formless, and there's even evidence in medical studies, MRI scans, where they're saying that they've had somebody in an MRI scan thinking and asking them questions, and their responses were coming from outside the body. Which confused them, and he was saying that, well, actually, it appears our soul, if you prefer that word, our soul is not in here; it's actually out of here. Things come in, like, if anything, we normally tend to see it in a negative way. You see like a person, you see like a puppets on a string, and we see that as a negative connotation. But I actually think we are puppets on a string, but we're the puppet, and we're the controller and the puppet. We're both, because I think we control this body from a different state, from a different side, and then we come back in, and that's why I think you can have different dreams and they can feel so real of different realities, because I think you're in more than one place at once.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You were talking about the Star Wars movies earlier. I think there's a lot of good analogies. I love the Avatar movie, because I think that's what we are. This body is an avatar, so we are controlling it from a different reality, and we are controlling it. And sometimes we get confused and we think we're the body.
Yeah, and there's lots, not just in Taoism, but there's lots of sort of poems and lots of philosophers that talks of that nature. It is that there's the there's always that feeling inside of most people that there's something more. There's always something more,
right.
And for a lot of people, like alcoholism, getting addictions, is that emptiness. They're seeking that thing that feels like it's missing, and it's missing because you're in this tiny little thing where you're so much more than that. It's not actually missing. It's that all of you can't fit in this. It's like another thing in Taoism, like Taoism would say, and in Buddhism as well, it's like the body's like a glove, and it's just on your hand. You're fitting that glove. This body, it can only fit so much of you. The rest of you is outside of that body. So there's so much more, and we think there's an emptiness, and that emptiness is that actually it's an expansion of that. There's so much more of you, and this is just part of you.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true, and I think it's really fascinating because as when we first started talking, I think you used the word woo woo, and for people like us, people in this society will say, well, you're woo woo, you're thinking about these things that aren't real, and I'm like, but I think that everybody has that feeling. Everybody has that feeling that there's something more, and that's why those movies like The Matrix and Star Wars and Avatar, why they resonate so much with us, because I think they touch us in a deeper place where we know there's something that, as you said, not missing, but we're being told that doesn't exist.
There's an interesting CIA document that I once saw that stated that it said it in a very scientific and slightly confusing way, but it stated that according to information they've studied over 40, 50 years, that all information is channeled, not created. And what they were indicating is that, like say Star Wars, that somebody didn't make that up. They channeled that from another reality. That idea, that concept is actually existing somewhere else. And so, like Lord of the Rings, all these stories are written. The writers may say we thought we made them up,
right,
but are actually being channeled, that we actually channel information. And what it was indicating was that, racing into that information I said about the thoughts seem to be coming inwards, is that what they were saying is that we channel everything. Everything is channeled into, we don't create things, it's channeled. So ideas, concepts, everything is channeled into our minds.
Yeah. Well, you hear a lot of artists who are honest will say that, musicians, book writers or authors, movie writers, they'll tell you this, it came to me, I woke up or I had a dream, Einstein talked about sometimes if he was struggling with something, he'd go to sleep. And the answer would come to him while he was asleep. So yeah, there's lots of indications of that. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I really enjoyed talking with you. For anybody that's listening who is interested in these concepts, where do they go next?
Well, you can, if you're interested in learning from me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, under Sifu Boggie. Also Linktree. I have my own website, my own mystery school, where I teach what I've talked about and more, or can, people ask the right question, ask the question, oh, what about this? I'll happily teach it. It's sort of how I am. And that school is known as Shundao, so SHUNDAO.uscreen.io. So we'll have the link in the thing as well. But yeah, so you can find my mystery school on shundao.uscreen.io.
All right. Sounds great. Well, I really appreciate your time today. It's great to get to know you and have you share your wisdom with us.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Enjoy your afternoon.
I will do. Take care.
Hey there, if you liked this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you liked. If you didn't like this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you didn't like. Go to grieftogrowth.com/community and look for Talk About the Podcast. I'll see you there.